Hey guys, welcome back to Andy's Dinosaur Reviews, and we have a very exciting figure to take a look at today. Well, I mean, it's exciting to me. Maybe not everyone will be all that excited, but this is one of the 5-inch basic figures. This is the Indoraptor, and this one was a gigantic pain in my butt to find. I could not get a hold of this one from the initial onset of this line. This was the one figure that really eluded me. Well, technically there's two, because there was also the brown Sticky Moloch. I was able to get a blue Sticky Moloch. The brown one still does elude me, and I'm on the lookout for the brown Sticky Moloch as well as the orange Velociraptor to complete the series. But this one here was one that I honestly had given up on. I thought I was never going to get because its time had passed. I don't believe this has been released in any of the newer lines of this series, so I was pretty confident that this one was just going to have to stay out of my collection until I saw someone recently posting a lot of dinosaurs on Facebook Marketplace, and I had contacted them and asked them if I could purchase just this figure because it was the only one I really needed. They said, yeah, sure, and now we have it here to take a look at, and I am, again, beyond excited to finally have this one, as it's one of the Jurassic figures that I felt like I was never going to get a hold of, kind of like the Jurassic Park 3 Alan Grant set with the alternate paint variant of Alan, and it has actually like a female Velociraptor from Jurassic Park 3, minus the actual correct head sculpt and everything, but that is a really cool set that I don't think I'll ever be able to get a hold of. So between that and this figure here, they're like the only two Mattel figures I think that I was really confident I wouldn't find, but as it turns out, I was wrong, and I now have the Indoraptor here. It looks pretty fun, looks pretty much just like the larger basic version, but obviously shrunken down now to a much smaller size. So let's go ahead, jump straight to a closer look at it right now. So starting up here at the head sculpt of our Indoraptor in true basic figure style, you can see we have no paint for the teeth, but the teeth are sculpted out pretty nicely. I feel like with a little paint application, it would look really quite nice, just like with the larger 12-inch basic figure. I had repainted that one a ways back, and I was a huge fan of that figure, and this one as well looks to be pretty much just like that. As far as the detailing goes, you can see some pretty nice looking scale detail throughout. Not quite as vibrant as what you saw in the larger basic version, but it is definitely there. The nostrils are sculpted out there at the tip of the snout. The eye is painted pretty decently, and you also have some of that reddish coloration leading back there behind the eye, which is one area of Indoraptor coloration that many people seem to forget about, but Mattel has applied it quite nicely there to the eye area and then behind the eye. You can also see the detailing there of the top of the head looks pretty good, leading back into the back of the neck. Again, we pick up on that kind of armored type of a look, the scoot-like area there of the back of the Indoraptor, as well as some of those quills there sticking off of the back of the neck. Pretty nice looking scale detail as we lead down the course of the neck. You start to see that stripe pick up here as far as the goldish coloration there in the neck. I feel like it was a little delayed as far as picking up, but it is still present on the figure. And we do also have, again, variation as we have both the orange and goldish tones of color there in the stripe. It starts out in a gold, picks up a mixture of both, but then ends in more of like the orange coloration as you lead back further into the dinosaur out into the tail. The scale detail looks pretty decent for the most part as far as the vibrancy of it, and it again runs down here into the arm. The arms are held in different positions. As you can see, it's kind of creeping along. This arm's picking up off of the ground, whereas this arm seems to be planted holding up the front of the dinosaur. The hand looks pretty nice. We have some scoots down the course of the fingers. The nails are also sculpted out. Of course, no actual nail paint, but considering I'm pretty sure the Indoraptor's nails are a blackish coloration, I guess you could technically count them as having nail paint. Moving back into the thigh does have some pretty nice looking muscle definition, and we also see that in the calf, but not so much. Like the calves are a little honestly scrawny as far as the muscle definition goes, but you can see the kneecap right there, and again, pretty nice looking scale detail moving down into the foot. Of course, the foot is oversized, but it does look quite nice as far as the sculpt goes. Again, scoots down the course of the feet right there, down the toes, and the nails, of course, have a very odd curve to them as far as making sure they're nice and dull so kids don't hurt themselves, but they are, present, and they look, I guess, about as good as you're going to get as far as a toy Indoraptor version goes. You do have more of the quills up here on the back as far as that kind of like scoot-like appearance down the back. Again, those quills pick up right above the hip area of the Indoraptor, and you can see that scoot-like appearance runs down the course of the tail, but it starts to taper off as we lead out into the tail, and you can see again more of that scale detail. Does look really quite nice. I feel like the scale detail looks even better actually out here onto the tail. And you do have a nice curve in the tail, a slight turn to it, but nothing overly flashy or dramatic. On the opposing side, you're really not going to see too much difference over here compared to the previous side. The only really big difference would be the fact that, again, the arm is planted, the legs are in different positions. The right leg is stretched back a little further than what we see on the left leg, but other than that, the dinosaur is in almost a completely like straight face forward pose, so there's not really too much difference in the positioning of the body that's really going to show you too much difference over here. Maybe you could see a little more of the stomach region over here in comparison to the previous side. The underside also sports some pretty nice looking detail, which you can see does look pretty good again for what it is. Being such a small figure, it does have some pretty impressive detailing. And as far as being a basic figure, it's pretty much your standard as far as what you get when it comes to paintwork on a basic figure. It actually does seem to have a speckling to it as well, which is again one of Mattel's favorite things to do. And this one actually kind of has like a silver speckling, so a little bit more of that kind of almost metallic type of paintwork to it with the yellow or more like gold and then the orange. We also have a silver here that looks like that very same similar kind of metallic look. But again, a pretty fun Indoraptor. Obviously, the proportions are very off when it comes to these smaller basic 5-inch figures. But as far as, one of these figures go for being an Indoraptor, it's definitely quite fun. Of course, you do have some articulation, but being a basic figure, you get basically the basic articulation. So you do have articulation in the arms, which can move forward and back, both arms. Same deal with the legs, forward and back. That one's actually really stiff. There we go. Forward and back. And the tail does have a swivel, but that's really about it. There's no other articulation. So basic paint and basic articulation for your basic figure. As far as a size goes, for a length, you are looking at about the 6¼ inch range, or about 16 centimeters. For a height, of course, it's down on all fours, so he's not very tall. You're looking at about 2 inches or 5 centimeters. For a size comparison, there is Mr. Papo T-Rex, the Attack Pack Colovosaurus, and Robert Muldoon in comparison to our 5-inch basic Indoraptor, and you can definitely see in comparison to these guys that it is very small. If you are not familiar with the 5-inch basic line, they are much smaller versions, basically, of the larger basic figures, although some of the smaller basics we've never had in a larger basic form, like the Tyrannosaurus or anything like that, or even Stygimoloch. I would love to see some of those released in the larger basic figures, but it seems as though almost Mattel has given up on the larger basics, as we haven't really had too many new figures from them in a long time. We had a Parasaurolophus and a Scorpius Rex. That's really about it, so hopefully we'll get more at some point, but I would also like to see more of these 5-inch basic figures as well, and this Indoraptor is definitely a fun addition to the line at a very small size. So this 5-inch basic Indoraptor is another fun release from Mattel. Again, it's not a brand new figure, and it might actually be a little bit of a pain to find if you are interested in looking for one or adding one to your collection. Although I will say that if you have the larger 12-inch basic, I feel like you honestly, unless you're like me and you want to get everything that Mattel releases, it's definitely not a must-have figure. The larger 12-inch basic version is definitely superior to this in pretty much every way. Much more appealing look. The proportions are a little bit nicer, of course, without the larger feet, because that's just inevitable when it comes to Mattel figures. But the sculpt just has more vibrant detail to it. It in general is nicer on the larger one, but being this smaller version, this is pretty much how they all look, really goofy and very strange as far as the proportions go, and the detail just isn't quite as vibrant as what you often see on Mattel figures, being that it's so small. But again, excluding those slight downsides, it's still a pretty fun figure, and if you come into this line obviously knowing what these figures look like, you'll probably enjoy this Indoraptor, and I feel like, again, I'm very happy to add it to my collection. Even though it's not the best Indoraptor that you'll ever see, it's still a fun one, and at this point, a pretty hard one to find. So it's definitely a very fulfilling feeling finally getting a hold of this figure after looking for it for so long, and I'm really psyched to add it to my collection, even if it's not the greatest Indoraptor out there. It does sport a pretty nice sculpt, some pretty nice paint as far as a basic figure goes, some fun articulation. So it is what it is. It's a pretty fun version of this Indoraptor, just not anything that I feel like you should absolutely go searching for. Unless you're obsessive like me and want to try to get everything, then I guess that's probably something you want to search for. But regardless, again, pretty cool Indoraptor. Not amazing, not great by any means, but still pretty fun. So if you are interested, my suggestion would probably be eBay, because that seems to be the place that you can really find most Mattel figures, even though you'll probably have to pay a pretty penny for pretty much everything on eBay when it comes to Jurassic figures. But that's probably the only place at this point I could think of. Maybe Mercari, that you might stumble upon one, or even Facebook Marketplace if you get lucky, but they don't show up very often. So hopefully you can find one if you are interested, and make sure you like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you in the next review. Thanks for watching.